Hi, I'm your host, Megalon Jones, and welcome back to the Sharp End of the Stick. We're doing something a little bit different. We're still playing Combat Mission Cold War, but typically what I do is I'll play a mission, record each turn, and in the end, edit it into a movie in which you see what I either did right or wrong. Now, full disclosure, I played this scenario twice. Every once in a while, I get a little bit obsessed about a scenario, and I really wasn't happy with my original outcome. So I'm going to show you the exact summary detailing my loss. As you can see, it's not very good at all. And this is the overview of where I ended up with the scenario. I just pulled the plug because it wasn't working. However, I am such a fan of this scenario that I decided I really wanted to showcase it on my channel. So I gave it a second go. And it's quite a really fascinating idea that the community member over at the Battlefront forums, this is a community-made scenario. It's not, it doesn't ship with the game. I will have the link in the description below. Essentially, it's the thoughts of a U.S. General, Dupuy, who, in the aftermath of the Vietnam War, and especially the Yom Kippur, the 1973 October War in the Middle East, major militaries have to start thinking about the power and precision of anti-tank guided weapons. Specifically in a situation where the U.S. Army is going to be fighting the Soviets, who have lots more of the AT-4 Saggers than the Egyptians ever had, in a post-massive retaliation world. So, originally, the U.S. military in Central Europe was basically a tripwire in which the response to Soviet aggression in Europe would more or less be up to Strategic Air Command, meaning that they were the tripwire for the nukes. The nukes were going to decide the issue. This starts to make less and less sense as the 60s go on. Not only do the Soviets have their own hydrogen bomb, but they're building delivery systems in which to put them into the continental United States. So, in essence, the United States can no longer toss nukes around relatively with relative impunity. In 1968, the American Secretary of Defense, McNamara, announced the end, or the official end, of massive retaliation in exchange for an idea called flexible response. For the United States Army, that meant it would have to fight a possibly protracted conventional war in Europe against the Soviets. However, there's an even bigger problem, considering the tempo of operations that are going to be happening in a hypothetical World War III. Taking a look at the casualty rates for Israeli tankers, especially in the Sinai where they faced the Saggers being fired by the Egyptian army, the United States Army could not withstand those levels of casualties. Which brings us to General Dupuy's thought exercise. How could a tank-heavy U.S. combined arms team successfully enact offensive operations in an environment loaded with Saggers and other ATGM weapons. The scenario I'm playing, Wild Bill's Gunslinger, comes right out of the textbooks, the writings of General Dupuy. And we basically have to take a combined arms team and neutralize the ATGM threat before we move on forward into a staging area that we have to clear out in order to clear the route for follow-on forces. Like I said, you're going to be seeing my second playthrough, so I have a bit of an unfair advantage. I know now for sure exactly what I'm facing. With that caveat, let's get into the scenario. Okay, as per usual, we're in the Federal Republic of Germany, a little bit northeast of Würzburg. The terrain is mostly open with lots of hills. There happens to be a marsh obstacle right about in the middle of the map, which is going to divide the battle space. The entire battlefield is more or less dominated by a series of ridges and hills. And on top of these hills sit forests and tree lines, giving the Soviets very excellent firing positions. There is a slight built-up town area towards the Soviet edge. I'm going to stay out of that. There is, however, on the right, when the camera pans over, a very interesting feature in that this little funnel here is perfect to put a platoon of armored fighting vehicles through unobserved for the most part. I'm going to call that the gap, and that's how I'm going to use to move my troops forward on the offensive. Both sides have large hills covered in forest dominating their portion of the map. I have been given a tank-heavy combat team from 1st Battalion. These are M60A1 Rise passives. So 2 platoons of tanks, 1 platoon of mechanized infantry. I've also been given a platoon of scouts from the battalion alongside the weapons platoon. So that's 4 tow-carrying M113s alongside a gargantuan amount of on and off map mortars, artillery, air support, and helicopters. We're not going to use the air support until I've taken care of Soviet anti-air defenses. So it's day 10 of World War III, and the U.S. Army has successfully brought the group of Soviet forces to a standstill in 5th Corps sector, and as such we're going on the offensive to start rolling them back towards the East German border. Battalion wants Team X-Ray to clear a path for follow-on forces to continue offensive operations. We've been told to expect what amounts to probably a reserve Soviet force, T-62s, BTRs, and we're going to have a lot of guided anti-tank weapons to deal with. The first part of the plan is to send my 2 platoons of armor along with the weapons platoon and forward observers up to our friendly side of the hill, see if we can spot Soviet armor and kill it. I've also called in a lot of preparatory barrages with the mortars and artillery to try to force the Soviet ATGM gunners to take cover. We make spots immediately, and then the shooting starts. I want you to get a load of just how fast the American tank gunners are able to spot and engage their targets. And this is at about a kilometer and a half or more range. The first minute of the fighting is completely dominated by the U.S. Army. It's on the second turn of the engagement that the Soviets start to make their own spots and start returning accurate fire. This entire sequence of events took exactly 120 seconds, and we came off with pretty light casualties. Essentially, there's 2 knocked out Pattons, one that's been severely damaged. Alright, now that we've put a dent in the Soviet firepower, we're going to have to figure out how to crack this nut. So the plan is as follows. Under the eyes of the forward observers and the TOW missile launchers, we're going to put 2 tank and 1 mechanized platoon along the right flank through the gap and assault the first Soviet position on the right. Absolutely vital to this will be the coordination of smoke to blind the Soviets and artillery barrages to force the ATGM gunners to keep their heads down. The bad news is that in the half hour since the initial fighting, I've been unable to spot any more juicy Soviet positions. They've all gone to vague contacts. I've got a lot of smoke that I can use, and any places I can't quite reach or don't have enough of the support battalion, from the battalion support, I can use the onboard white phosphor shells found in the Patton tanks. They make a really nice smoke screen too. To my absolute delight, I'm able to get everyone across without a single casualty. And we're able to get everyone through the gap and crash into the Soviet right flank. I set the tanks to bounding overwatch and begin using prophylactic fire against suspected Soviet positions. We're also able to spot on the very far end of the map a T-62 that didn't get taken care of in the first round of fighting. The gunnery and marksmanship on the American troops has so far been very good. I counted 4 hits out of 5 shots. My absolute biggest worry at this point is RPG and AT3, AT4, AT7 teams that I haven't spotted yet taking out my M113s. First and second platoon make an absolute hash of the Soviet defenses on CP-28, and the rattled survivors retreat back into the forest. That's kind of bad news because I can't see them, and if I can't see them back there, I'm going to have a hard time killing them. Nonetheless, 3rd Platoon is able to disembark from their APCs and start an assault on the Soviet CP-28 position. Everything's turning up Millhouse right until the point where we start to get a little bit deeper into the CP-28. And we start taking fire from other Soviet positions. These guys have the defensive positions are mutually supportive. Okay, so now we're going to have a top-down or large-scale view of what's going on. That's where we started. And there's a couple of Patton tanks that I've lost, one that's immobilized and one that's destroyed. There you can see 3rd Platoon engaging the Soviets in the woods and engaging the Soviets in Hill 33. And we're going to have to come up with a plan to neutralize all of this. So the course of action is going to look like this. We're going to dump more artillery on Hill 33. We're going to pull the scout platoon out of reserve, send them through the gap, and have them reinforce 3rd Platoon. At the same time, the survivors of 1st and 2nd are going to more or less merge into a single operational platoon, and they're going to attack into the Soviet rear of Hill 33 to try to see if we can't get any targets of opportunity. The other thing is I want to get behind the Soviets so I can look at their positions on the left flank. There are still armor sound contacts back there. I have no eyes on it. I don't know what it is. And before I keep moving, I got to be able to soften up those positions in order to keep this ball rolling. So the Soviets still have some operational ATGM positions at Hill 33, and they take out a Patton tank. We give those guys the same treatment that we gave the troops in CP-28, which is just more or less mass barrage by tanks. While all this is going on, I'm still making spots by the TOW missile launchers, and we're taking out the occasional T-62. Another encouraging sign is that I'm able to move the scout platoon on the other side of the map without the use of smoke, which is good because I don't have any more smoke to lay down. So that basically tells me that I've attrited the Soviet positions, at least to the front, and we could probably start to breathe a little bit easier moving the armored portion of Team X-Ray in between CP-28 and Hill 33. We run into the PT-76, which had been visible from some of our forward observers. We also come into contact with our first Zebra Sierra uniform mobile anti-aircraft weapon. He dies quick. However, all the commotion allows the PT-76 to spot my armor, and he's able to schwack a Patton tank with a low velocity 76 millimeter round. His victory is very short-lived. He lives about another 7 or 8 seconds before he's brewed up. To the immediate rear of all this, the scout platoon joins the fight alongside 3rd Platoon with the survivors in CP-28, and they're able to push the Soviets even deeper into that sort of wooded copse area. Unfortunately, our forward momentum gets stalled when the infantry runs across a BTR that we previously hadn't spotted. We have the damnedest time trying to kill this thing as he uses his heavy machine gun to stop us cold in our tracks. And something interesting has happened. A engineer platoon has arrived. I wasn't expecting that. As far as I can remember, it wasn't quite in the briefing. So there we've got the back area where we started with the engineers. We've got the scout platoon. They are engaging the Soviets in CP-28. We've got the ad hoc 1st Platoon armor creeping around the rear to try to get into the backside of Hill 33. And whatever it is, there is between the main Soviet ridge and Hill 36. Our tanks find some really juicy targets. 2.5 ton supply trucks, as well as Soviet mortar teams dug in. But this is starting to get like a broken record here. As far as my tanks start moving, things go, or not even tanks, just my friendly forces, they start going well. All of a sudden they run into something where it stops my momentum. Now that was automatic anti-aircraft fire from somewhere, and he just zapped 2 Patton tanks, wrecking their optics, screwing up their gunnery. So now I basically have 1, maybe 2 fully operational Pattons, and that anti-aircraft crew has no idea how bad they've just screwed things up in my mind. That is until a second tank heavy combat team, Team Yankee, shows up. These guys are supposed to be the follow-on forces, and I'm literally at maybe the 10-minute mark until the scenario ends. So I've really got to come up with a real humdinger. And here's the plan. On the right, 3rd Platoon and the scouts from X-Ray are going to seize Hill 33. The 2 tank platoons from Yankee are going to charge down the middle and blast away at anything that moves, while 3rd Platoon and the engineers that arrived are going to assault Hill 36. Time is of the essence. I am going to stop for nothing. Everything dies, we seize all the objectives and win. Now, the terrain is going to come into play here, especially that marshy part in the center left of the map. It more or less bisects the axis of advance. So, again, tanks down the middle, infantry on the left, and hope the Soviets are pretty well beat up at this point where we can bring about some kind of victory, because we're out of time. And I think technically I'm not supposed to be using Team Yankee in this sense, but we're going for it. It was given to me. First, 2nd Platoon of Team Yankee, they're going to start off by doing a mad rush and then begin doing bounding overwatch. There is still quite a bit of Soviet forces left, and they throw everything they got at Yankee. The remaining ATGMs. RPGs are a major pain in the ass. At one point, and you'll see here in a few seconds or so, the Soviets have those nasty little 40mm grenade launchers. They will ruin your tank. I mean, they're not going to kill the crew, but they are going to screw up all the important bits of it. Radio, optics, etc., etc. Okay, so here comes the Soviet AGS grenade launcher. He makes a hash of this tank here. I mean, now it's basically just like an APC. It can still use its main gun. It's not really that accurate anymore. But here's one good thing is that every time the Soviets open up with these hidden assets, they get shellacked. Now the question is, am I going to run out of tanks before they run out of anti-tank teams or ambushes? And since I was given engineer teams, I probably should have figured there'd be mines somewhere. Is there mines? Yes, there are mines. We lose one there. In the assault on CP-36, the engineers and 3rd Platoon Team Yankee are able to make good way across quite a bit of open ground without much in the way of any resistance. They get right up to CP-36, pop smoke, dump out their infantry, and grab the touch objective there. Which more or less brings this whole thing to a close. I was given some overtime as far as extra minutes to play, but I wasn't really able to make a whole lot of good use of it. Trying to rearrange and maneuver forces, time was up. So when we get the plug pulled on the scenario, I am given a minor victory. I killed about 3 times as many Soviet personnel as our own friendly KIAs. The tank battle was even. We lost about as much as they did. I killed quite a few BTR APCs. And so it's a minor victory. Like, I really wasn't supposed to deploy Yankee because that was a follow-on force. Well, Yankee is kind of up shit's creek along with X-Ray. Neither one of these guys are particularly in any good spot to keep going. The star of the show, if you're wondering, is the forward observers and the tow missile launchers, which is great because those things have let me down so often, and I finally have gotten to use them in a way in which, I'm really happy with. I've been in contact with the scenario author back at the Battlefront forums, and he seems amenable to cleaning up the scenario briefing a little bit. He said he's interested in altering the way the objectives are. My understanding is that when you put the words clear, this objective, it means to kill or force off the Soviets from these positions. It only became apparent to me about halfway through that all you had to do was touch them, with the exception of this last one that I wasn't able to. That is an actual clear objective. That's something where I have to get rid of the Soviet forces. So 4 out of 5 objectives were taken. 1st Battalion has suffered some serious losses. The Soviets have suffered some real serious losses. I really like this. The scenario has another 2 more scenarios up, and I'm going to be doing them as well. This is a fantastic scenario. It needs a little bit of a cleanup, but it's one of those things that kind of, like I said early on, I kind of got obsessed with. Well, I hope you enjoyed everything, and I can't wait to see you on the next one.
Total terror. Frankenstein meets the space monster.
All recorders to fast.
This is it. For the first time on the screen, America's missile might mobilized against annihilating invaders from outer space.
We have come here to this planet for one purpose only, to acquire breeding stock to repopulate our planet.
See the kidnapping of the Earth Maidens for the love-starved slaves of the sterile planet.
Very good. We have done well, Nadia.
I am pleased, Princess. You are satisfied.
I will be satisfied when we have enough more like her to commence phase 3.
See the terror terrifying invasion of the Beach Party. C, a United States astro robot become a creature of death. For the first time, see Earth Horror versus Space Terror. See Frankenstein meets the Space Monster in Futurama.